Thanks for joining us. My name is Julia. I'm the volunteer coordinator at the Coffee Oasis. I've been here for about 9 years as a case manager, as a manager over case management, as a training specialist for staff and for youth to learn about trauma-informed care, and now as the volunteer coordinator.
I'm Patrick Still. I'm Senior Director of Youth Programs for the Coffee Oasis. This stint of employment, I've been here for 13 years, mainly in job training and case management. And since 2015, I've been some form of director around youth programs.
This training is going to take anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours. We'll take a break halfway through. We're going to start with just explaining who the Coffee Oasis is, our mission, our vision, our history, core values. Then we'll spend some time talking about the actual youth programs that we have at Coffee Oasis and the way that you can actually volunteer in each of those programs. I'll go over the volunteer process again briefly. We'll take a break, and then we're going to talk about kind of like youth culture very briefly. We'll spend some time talking about trauma-informed care and sexual exploitation. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. So, Pat's going to start us off with our mission and history of Coffee Oasis.
The Coffee Oasis mission is restoring communities through compassionate and youth programs and successful coffee businesses. This mission, we are an organization that is a faith-based nonprofit. We believe in giving pathways of opportunity to youth in our community, and we understand that these youth are our future in this community. That, however, those youth are often hindered by hurts and homelessness, and they can't reach their full potential. The Coffee Oasis interacts with the youth of our community through several programs that will be presented today, like Oasis Centers, like case management, like housing programs. We also operate as businesses. These businesses give a great third place where both community and youth can have a neutral place to meet and connect. They also operate as places for job training to give youth, again, yet another potential area of growth. Today, we're going to go over those different programs and talk a little bit about our history, talk a little bit about some of our best practices in youth programs. Our history. Dave and Cindy Frederick, our original founder, started this type of ministry through kind of two avenues. Dave, the founder, was a pastor in the community, and he left a church to start a small home church. Wanting to provide for his family, he started working as a chaplain with the Bremerton Police Department. He also, him and his family, started doing foster care. And through those two avenues, they saw an audience of hurting and homeless youth in the community that they didn't know that were here, and sought to look for a place to interact with them. Dave and Cindy, never being business owners before, found a business, the Coffee Oasis, that was going out of business at the time, never having partaked of drinking coffee before. They stepped out in faith and bought a coffee business as a place to interact with youth. The ministry here, or the programs here, first started with two expressions, late night on Friday night and some street outreach. The first late night was attended by 4 youth that street outreach workers met at Smoker's Corner, which is a place where kids came and smoked 25 feet off of Bremerton High School's property.
Which is really entertaining to think of Dave going up to a bunch of kids and being like, come here.
We opened our doors in 97 as Hope in Christ Ministries. Over the years, we have changed our name to Coffee Oasis because that is the name we were known in the community because of our coffee shops. What had started with a one late night has grown to a continuum of services that include right now 5 locations that have drop-in centers, case management, job training, 2 housing programs as an organization in many successful businesses. And as we go through this, we'll highlight some of those programs so you become a little more acquainted with us. To get us started, I also just want to touch on our core values. Every organization has some principles that guide their ship. The Coffee Oasis has some principles that guide who we are too. First of all, first principle or core value is truth. The principle is Jesus is our model. Our practice is we follow Jesus in every decision we make. The second is compassion. We love because Jesus has loved us. We seek to bring the hope of Jesus to the pain on the streets. Community. We are very much a community-focused organization. We have a lot of partners. Our name is well known in the community. We don't want to be an entity in the community. We want to be an entity that knows and is related by our community. And our principle is be a family and love the city that we're in. Our practice is we care for one another because we were cared for. Excellence. Principles show the incomparable greatness of Jesus in everything we do. Practice to make superior coffee, to provide best care for youth, and see people celebrate Jesus. Our last core value is replication. Principle, teach, show others what we value. Our practice to help others faithfully live these values.
Any questions on that? So just to clarify, so the age range that we work with is 13 to 25, and we have locations in Paulsbo, Bremerton, Port Orchard, and then in Tacoma as well. So, okay. We're going to now spend some time talking about street youth culture and different dynamics that you might experience when you are interacting with the youth.
The Coffee Oasis serves all youth ages 13 to 25. Each youth have their own unique stories and experiences. Some of the situations that you may experience while working with youth for the Coffee Oasis may be these things. Unstable housing. Many of our youth are experiencing homelessness or have run away, often leaving homes because people in their lives are unstable, abusive, or neglectful. Parents often are experiencing the same things that youth are. They are experiencing issues of mental health, unemployment, food insecurity, emotional stress, addiction, and more. Youth behaviors may not be the most welcoming. A lot of times they are experiencing stress or disappointment, and when being introduced to a new volunteer or staff, they will often act defensive at first. and they're seeking whether a volunteer or staff will stick it out, will stay around. They secretly want long-standing relationships, and they're seeing if that individual will stay. Youth on the streets have a different concept of time, priorities, and boundaries, or in some cases, a lack of. The other day, they live a day by day world or existence, and they see themselves in a different situation or different way than dominant society. A youth brain also has not fully developed by 25. This means that the prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed, where temperament, decision making, impulsive decision making may happen, and it's not fully in operation. This often explains why teens and young adults live a here and now reality with little thought for the future consequences. 37% of our youth that come into the drop-in center identify as homeless or have experienced stints of homelessness. The number leaps to 61% when it comes to a relationship and case management. So why so many are experiencing homelessness? This is our current data through our human management intake system. In our families, we see conflict in our families. Almost 51% of our youth come from single family homes where either a mother or father are not present. Parents they're experiencing parental abuse or neglect within their family of origin. 43% of our youth experience physical, emotional abuse within their homes. Parental or youth mental health and substance abuse. 23% experience mental health issues, and 18% have experienced chemical dependency issues within their lives. These situations have led to them experiencing houselessness or homelessness that have brought them into a relationship with the Coffee Oasis.
Any questions? Okay. All right, we're going to spend some time talking about trauma-informed care. So it's a term that is becoming, thankfully, increasingly familiar, but we're just going to go over it anyway. So the Coffee Oasis is a trauma-informed organization. Trauma-informed care means treating the whole person, which includes looking at somebody's past and their coping skills and all of what makes them who they are. This usually looks like a lot of coping mechanisms for behaviors that usually are not well received by others, but those behaviors are serving a purpose for them. So what does it mean to be a trauma-informed organization and a trauma-informed volunteer? So I'm going to go through a list of 6 different things. So number 1 is create safety. So if a youth is upset or appears really out of control, only the staff members should be the ones interacting with that youth. Your role as a volunteer is to be much more focused on the other youth and keeping them safe. A lot of times our youth like to help each other when one of them is upset, and it sometimes just aggravates the situation. And so it's really well-intentioned, but so all that to say, as a volunteer, if you can just assist in creating safety for that space, only the staff member will be interacting with the youth that seems to be physically out of control. So number 1, creating safety. Number 2, regulating the nervous system. So we all respond to stress very, very differently. You might be familiar with the term fight, flight, freeze, faint, fawn. And so stress really affects the brain by pulling you out of a logical reasoning and just thrusting you into a state of survival and panic. So if you are somebody that experiences hyperarousal, where you get explosive and jittery and irritable, or somebody that goes into hypoarousal, where you are depressed or withdrawn or kind of zombie-like. Both of those are a stress response. So it might look different, and it's going to look different for the youth as well. So when youth go into either one of those states, it's really important for volunteers and staff to stay calm, use the tools that we have, and support them to the best of our ability. Number 3 is building a connected relationship. This is the number one way to regulate somebody's nervous system when they're upset in any way. When we're around people that we care about, our bodies produce oxytocin. It's a attachment bonding chemical that really helps calm the nervous system down quite a bit. If we stay connected to the youth in dialogue and by having empathy, we're eventually going to be able to help them calm their nerves enough to then be open to talking about what happened. So the worst thing you can do as a staff member or as a volunteer is to try to meet their emotions with logic. It's just not going to work. If you want to try to calm them down, you have to meet their emotions with emotional empathy, and that will be what calms them down. And then they'll be at a place where they can actually begin to talk about, okay, well, here's what triggered me. And yeah, that probably wasn't the best decision. Or, okay, I'm hearing the feedback. Here's what I need to do differently. But that's not going to be doable when they're in the moment. So your job as a volunteer is just to stay emotionally connected. Usually means not a lot of talking, usually means a lot of listening and providing empathy. We don't want to enter their chaos. We want to share the calm that we have, not enter the chaos that they're experiencing. Number 4, supporting the development of a coherent narrative. So when I am a private practice therapist in addition to a volunteer coordinator, so I'll nerd out for a little bit in that your brain is split into your right and left hemisphere. Your right hemisphere is much more dominant in emotions that are pretty intense: anger, sadness, panic, fear, joy, despair, and your left hemisphere is much more dominant in logic, language, reasoning. Guess which hemisphere goes offline when you're in trauma? The one that would maybe be most helpful. So we've done brain scans that show that there is no activity in the left hemisphere when you're in the middle of trauma. So what that means is if I'm a youth who's experiencing lots of trauma, my ability to understand what has happened and when is not going to be available. Your Broca's area, which is dominant on the left side, isn't there. That's your language center. And so if that part is not active when a trauma is happening, all you have is a flurry and a whirlwind of emotion and no language for it, no ability to talk about chronologically what happened. So the disconnection between those two hemispheres when you're going through trauma makes it really, really hard for youth to be able to tell your story. So that means you might be getting to know a youth and it sounds as though they're pulling your leg because you're in your head thinking there's no way that you were like in the military and then you moved from Montana, but you're only 19, but then this happened. They're probably doing the best that they can, because it's kind of embarrassing to go, I don't know what happened for the last 3 years. Somebody's asking me that I don't know very well, and I want to share who I am and where I've come from, and I don't know. So I'm just going to kind of fill in the blanks a little bit. So when we can provide an environment where there is predictability and their structure, it allows the youth to begin to slow down enough and calm enough to where they can actually begin to piece together their story. There's nothing more honoring than when we can understand what our narrative has been up to this point. And truly, you can't make a lot of growth and progress until you have metabolized your own narrative. And so, the way that we do that, providing a healthy structure, healthy boundaries, lots of warmth, lots of empathy. And that's also finally when we can begin to learn alternative coping skills that are going to serve us better, rather than some of the survival skills a lot of our youth have learned. So, any questions? Okay. Number 5 is practicing power with strategies. So one of the hallmarks of trauma is loss of control, loss of power. And when somebody is wielding power over you with no regard to your feelings or your thoughts, the toxic shame of the original trauma can kind of come flooding back. So, as adults, as volunteers, we really want to use the power that we have really well. And so, power with strategies within a relationship with youth looks like giving them back a bit of autonomy, going, okay, what do you think might work? What are your thoughts? What do you see as the problem? What's your plan here? Rather than just having because I'm in a position of authority, here's what's going to happen. It's giving them the opportunity to problem solve themselves, which is going to only help them become adults that are going to be able to function in society even better. And then lastly, build social, emotional, and resiliency skills. Trauma robs us of the time spent where we actually develop social emotional skills. Simple example is most of us know that the way that you talk to your boss is very different than you talk to your best friend. A lot of the times, or at least some of the time, it's common that a youth doesn't have a job, not because they aren't employable, but because they don't know how to talk to a future employer. They don't know that you shouldn't text or email with very poor grammar, or in a way that is oversharing personal information, and so just things like that. Most of the youth, I mean, just as a blanket, most of the youth are doing the best they've been shown how to do. Right? They're working with what they've got. They're working with what they've observed, and so our job as volunteers, as staff, is to kind of fill in the gaps where things are missing, and those things are sometimes barriers to them making a good connection with an employer, communicating professionally with a landlord, where the landlord might pick them over another possible tenant. And so social emotional skills aren't an option for you if you're just in a state of survival, right? Like that fight, flight, or freeze, that response is a survival response. So if I'm being chased by a grizzly bear, I'm not really going to care about how I'm communicating to other people, or about making that dentist appointment, or about being really professional. I'm going to be so consumed with I'm being chased by a grizzly bear. You might see a youth sitting in the center just scrolling through their phone, seeming super relaxed. That doesn't mean they're not in a state of survival, where we might be confused as to, okay, why are they communicating in a way that is so disrespectful or so relaxed? It's going to be because they are working with what they've got, and what they've got is not a lot of practice with good skills. Right,
Moving on to a focus of understanding diversity, culture, and privilege. As a potential volunteer coming in, you're going to come into relationship with youth that have very differing stories and come from a different environment. I just want to touch briefly on these concepts that may help in building understanding, and may help grow your relationship with the youth. Let's start with some definition. Diversity. Diversity is the practice of learning from and involving people from a range of different social, ethnic, and economic backgrounds. Culture. Culture is the customs, arts, social situations, achievements of a particular nation, people, and other social group. Privilege. Privilege is a special right, advantage that is granted or available only to a particular group. Our youth that have experienced houselessness or homelessness come from a different culture or than dominant society. They also experience different privileges. Areas of privilege we may hold that our youth do not likely have or hold is a consistent and safe place to sleep, access to clean water and food at any time, access to daily showers or restrooms, access to clean clothes or options that they can choose from in fashion. They may not they may not have the opportunity to graduate high school on time or go to college or experience higher education. Civic status, not living in fear of deportation. Strong or supportive community, and resources to pay for medical, dental, and other health practices, or reliable transportation. And how we interact our culture or privilege with their culture. If you are able to walk in their shoes a little bit, experience and listen well, it may further your relationship. Trying to see life by our lens may cause a division or lack of growth in the relationship. So these areas of understanding and building understanding of diversity, culture, and privilege is one of the things we are calling a potential volunteer or staff member in to experience that growth with us.
Any questions? We're now going to wrap up the time talking about human trafficking and sexual exploitation. So I'm going to go over a couple definitions and then talk about some myths that are pretty common held beliefs around trafficking. So the definition of sex trafficking is the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, obtaining, patronizing, or soliciting of a person for the purpose of a commercial sex act in which that act is induced by fraud, force, coercion, or in which the person induced to perform the act has not attained 18 years of age. So that's the definition we're working with there. Labor trafficking definition is the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, or obtaining of a person for labor or services through the use of force, fraud, or coercion for the purposes of subjection to involuntary servitude, peonage, debt, bondage, or slavery. So it's a mouthful, but that's the definition we have. So, common misconceptions about trafficking and runaway and homeless youth. Myth number 1, human trafficking only happens to youth in metropolitan areas. So, false. Reality is human trafficking happens in rural, suburban areas. Labor trafficking and sex trafficking happen in every state, in sparsely populated locations, rural locations, small towns, suburban communities, and major metropolitan areas. I think a lot of times we maybe think of sex trafficking as like, oh, that happens in Las Vegas or in big cities, Chicago or California somewhere, but it really happens just about anywhere. Myth number 2, youth must be transported across state lines or international borders to be victims of trafficking. Reality is that trafficking does not require movement across state lines or international borders. Runaway and homeless youth can be trafficked in their very own communities. And even though transportation is sometimes used as a control mechanism, it's not necessary. It's just not a necessary component. I think sometimes we picture Taken, that movie Taken, where we go, oh, it's got to be like in a foreign country, and then you're taken on a cruise ship or something. It really can happen in your own neighborhood. So it's important that we become accustomed to what we're looking for, that we're not looking for the typical picture of trafficking where someone's taken to Guam and made to be there in a brothel. Trafficking looks very discreet sometimes. So myth number 3, human trafficking requires the trafficker to use physical force, such as beatings, chains, or handcuffs to control the young person, when the reality is trafficking doesn't really require any physical restraint. Doesn't require bodily harm, doesn't require physical force. Traffickers also use psychological means like threats, fraud, abuse, anything like that to exert control over their victims. Traffickers control their victims by removing all opportunities for them to make their own choices. Myth number 4, trafficked youth are always female. Reality is trafficking victims are male and female, gay, straight, bisexual, transgender, questioning. In 2016, a study commissioned by the U.S. Department of Justice found that males make up about 36% of children that are caught up in the U.S. sex industry. 60% of them are female, and then less than 5% are transgender males and females. Myth number 5, and this is a big one. Youth will tell you if they are being trafficked or if they've been trafficked. The reality is, victims of human trafficking, they often don't seek help or even self-identify as a crime, as victims of a crime. Sometimes youth don't even realize that they are victims of human trafficking. They don't even know what's actually happening. And this is largely because when the trafficker is a relative or somebody that the youth knows well, it becomes very difficult for the youth to understand what's happening, and even more difficult to ask for help. Youth may often feel powerless, afraid, threatened, and in some cases feel like they're not even going to be believed. There's many reasons that youth don't self-identify or seek help. And this is especially true for when trafficking happens. Trafficking happens within a romantic relationship. So there's an unfortunate phrase, hook up for housing, where maybe it's a boyfriend and a girlfriend, and the boyfriend's, telling the girlfriend, well, like, so-and-so is going to let us crash like at their place for 2 weeks so we can stay out of the rain. Just go hang out with him for a bit. Like, he says he just wants to hang out with you, or just go do this thing. Like, it's not a big deal. Just do that. And then we have a place to stay. So trafficking doesn't look like, it just doesn't look like the movies. It looks very subtle and very discreet. And so a youth, if I'm that girl, I might be confused on what's happening. I might be confused on, oh, well, I'm choosing to do this. And I guess, this would get us out of the rain. So like, okay, I should do this. And my boyfriend loves me. Like he wants to protect me, and he's the only person I have. So it makes it just really confusing as what's happening. So knowing that as a volunteer, as a staff member, you just want to know that they're probably not going to tell you, I'm being trafficked. They might be sharing, if they get to a close relationship with you where they start to share a dynamic at play. It's really good for you to be listening as to what's going on. Myth number 6 is that sex trafficking only happens to adults. Reality is that research shows that even though human trafficking spans all demographics, youth are particularly susceptible to traffickers or trafficking situations. Runaway and homeless youth lack a strong supportive network and run away to unfamiliar environments, making them particularly at risk for trafficking. Vulnerable youth or runaway homeless youth have experienced a lot of traumas, and those traumas make them a lot more vulnerable to traffickers. I get nervous anytime I'm driving in the rain and I see a young girl with a backpack walking, because you never know if that's a runaway youth who got a big fight with mom and dad and they're just upset and they're going to walk to their best friend's house, but it's really far away. And somebody pulls up and goes, hey, do you need a ride? And maybe that youth says, well, yeah. And they say, hey, it's raining. Like, where do you need to go? I'm on my way. And okay, they hop in the car. I was going to stop on my way to McDonald's before continuing. Do you want anything? Like, are you hungry? I mean, they will seem very, very, very caring, but it's a very strategic act. So all that to say that that's what also makes it more confusing for youth, is that suddenly this person is taking care of them after their parents have kicked them out and they're mean, and this person is driving them places and giving them food and maybe providing resources, and then they maybe develop a romantic relationship, and then there's a sense of, well, I don't have anybody else, and this person's been taking care of me and they love me, and it just becomes, it's usually not a quick switch. It's a very strategic way that it happens. So just be listening for dynamics that feel off, but be very mindful on not confronting the youth about them. That can A, scare them off, and B, make them feel like you're against the person that they're so loyal to. We would just encourage you, if you hear something that sounds fishy, please communicate that to a staff member. Let them be in charge of navigating that territory. You just be a good listener and reporter. The next myth is that the typical trafficker who preys on youth is an easy to spot bad guy. So, just like I said, there's no typical trafficker. Young people can be trafficked by their parents, by family members, by relatives, family friends, boyfriends, girlfriends, intimate partners, employers, labor brokers, smugglers, friends. Traffickers come from all walks of life. They can be men or women, they can be old or young, they can be any race or ethnicity, any sexual orientation, any economic or social bracket. They can be part of an organized enterprise like a street gang, or they can just work alone. So there really is no particular profile of a person that you're looking for. Myth number 8, and it's the last one, is that young adults who are experiencing homelessness want to be involved in the sex trade and therefore are not trafficked. Reality is many runaway and homeless youth, specifically between the ages of 18 to 22, those that are involved in the sex trade or survival acts, they're usually forced by their circumstances due to their age, their inability to secure housing, lack of employment, mental health, a whole host of things. And so these young people feel like they don't have any other option but to trade sex for something of value. Any questions on that? Okay. That concludes our training. So thank you for either watching or being here. The work of volunteering with these youth that we serve is a slow and steady process. So I always like to close with a very clear statement that you may not see rapid change in the amount of time that you're volunteering. You really want to think of this as you are pulling up your bootstraps for a long-term work. There's so many beautiful stories I've had from volunteers where they describe, even something as simple as coming to the drop-in center every week and no kids approach them and they think, well, I'm not making a difference. But heaven forbid that volunteer takes vacation that week, and then those kids flock to the staff member and demand to know where that volunteer is because they're always there, and they're always there, and they're there. So it just goes to show that your biggest asset as a volunteer is your time, like your consistency and your availability and your ability to listen. You don't have to have great advice. You don't have to counsel. You just need to be able to listen. You need to show up and just be there. And again, even if it doesn't result in having some big transformative conversation, or you watch a youth go from being homeless to housed and successful and back in school and reconciled with family, there's little tiny shifts that happen that really change the trajectory for somebody. So if you've ever gone sailing, and maybe I'm going to get this wrong, but my understanding is that ships, when they are in the ocean, they adjust their direction by nautical degrees. And so maybe it's 30 nautical degrees east or 45 nautical degrees west, right? If that ship, think of like a big cargo ship, were to only adjust by 2 nautical degrees east, there'd be very little, if any, shift in the direction of that ship. However, 20 miles later, that ship is going to be in a very, very different location. And so that's what we have to think about when we're working with people who have different trauma, or they are runaways, or they are struggling with housing and things like that, is that we are, as volunteers and staff, we're making 1 to 2 degree shifts. We're not making big 45-degree shifts. If that's what you look for and that's what you're aiming for, you'll get burned out pretty quick and feel very discouraged. But just know that even if you don't see significant transformation, the mere act of your consistent presence, that does something for a kid. That makes them question or wonder, wow, that person shows up all the time. And truly, volunteers have a whole different layer of influence, I think, than staff members, because the youth know, well, staff members, it's your job. You're being paid to care for me, right? A volunteer that's showing up consistently, that speaks on a very different level than what I, as a staff member, could ever accomplish, because you're showing up and you're not being paid. So that must mean you maybe actually do kind of care. So I just want to emphasize that volunteers, like you have such a beautiful influence that's very unique. And again, it doesn't come down to um, advice giving or making some big change. It comes down to, can you be available? Can you be consistent? And can you just listen really well? And sure, if they ask for your advice, go for it. But most of the time, they just want to be seen. So, thank you so much for being here. And thank you for watching. Again, the process is this orientation, background check. Most of you at this point, if you're watching this or if you've been here, you've done an application. And once all of that is good to go, I will communicate with you and the geographic manager of the location that you're interested in, and they'll connect with you and say, okay, what role do you want to volunteer in? What's your time availability, and what do we need here? There might be too many mentors, but not enough drop-in center people. There might be a huge need for street outreach, but maybe not too much for the shelter. So there'll be a conversation between you and whatever geographic manager you're connected to about where to go from there. So, any questions? Okay, thanks.